Good afternoon, students. Welcome to the fifth session of electrical machine, that is the module 4 of basic electrical engineering ESEE 101. In previous session, I discussed the torque and equation of induction motor, the construction, the stator and the rotor, the types of winding in the induction motor. Now, in this session, you will learn the concept of slip, number 1. Number 2, the torque in induction motor. Number 3, the starting torque. Number 4, the torque under running condition. Number 5, the relation between torque and slip. Number 6, torque speed curve. Number 7, power stages in an induction motor. Number 8, the starting of induction motors. So these topics will cover in this session, and the numericals we will discuss in the next session. Okay, so let's go to today's topic. First is concept of slip. The magnitude and frequency of the rotor voltage depend on the speed of the relative motion between rotor and the flux crossing the air gap. The difference between the synchronous speed and the rotor speed is expressed as a fraction of synchronous speed. That fraction is known as slip. That slip determines the speed of the rotor. The percentage value of slip is equals to ns minus n. In some book, you will see it is written as nr. That means the speed of the rotor. So both are correct. Either you write n or nr divided by ns into 100, where ns equals to the synchronous speed and n is the rotor speed, right? And s is the slip. So the value of the slip at full load is about 4 to 5% for small motors and about 2 to 2.5% for large motors. The slip at no load is about 1%. Thus, the speed of an AC induction motor is almost constant from no load to full load. Suppose you take one example, that is the frequency of, suppose the frequency of the induction motor is 50 Hertz. Okay, and the number of pole equals to 6, right? So what will be the ns value? I told you that ns is the synchronous speed and its formula is 120 F by P, right? So put the values 120 into 50 divided by 6. That means 1000 RPM. Okay. Now, for an induction motor, the rotor speed can never be equal to the synchronous speed. It is always less than the synchronous speed. So suppose the rotor speed, I am writing this as nr. Okay, nr equals to 950 RPM. Because if the synchronous speed becomes equals to the rotor speed, then the net difference between the speed, that means the relative difference between the speed, will be equals to 0. So there will be no production of EMF. Hence, the torque will become 0. The rotor will stop rotating, right? So now let's find out what is the value of slip. So slip value is 1000 minus 950 divided by the 1000. That means 50 divided by 1000. So this one is equals to 0.05. Okay. So 0.05 is the slip for this induction motor. Or if you want to convert it into percentage, then it will be 5% slip. Okay. Now, when the rotor is stationary, the frequency of the rotor current is same as the supply frequency, but the rotor starts revolving and then the frequency depends upon the relative speed or on slip speed. Let any slip speed, the frequency of the rotor be f dash. Then ns minus n equals to 120 f dash by p. Okay. And ns equals to 120 f by p. So just by dividing, you will get f dash by f equals to ns minus n by ns, that means s. So the rotor current will have the frequency of f dash equals to s into f. Remember this equation, that is f dash equals to s into f. This is very, very important equation, okay, with the slip. Now, and when flowing through the individual phases of rotor winding give rise to the rotor magnetic field. This individual rotor magnetic field produce a combined rotating magnetic field whose speed relative to rotor is s into ns. That how will you calculate this one? The speed relative to rotor means 120 f dash by p. What is f dash? S into capital F, s into small f, that means the frequency. So s into 120 f by p, that means s into synchronous speed. Okay. Now is the torque that we are getting from the shaft of the induction motor. Here you can see the EMF generated at the rotor side, that is E2. Okay. Next is the generation of I1. Okay. And it will be equals to again phi. Right. Now it has been shown in the case of DC motor that torque TA is proportional to the product of armature current and flux per pole, that is TA is directly proportional to phi into Ia. Now similarly, in this case of the induction motor, the torque is also proportional to the flux per stator pole and the rotor current. However, there is one more factor that has to be taken into account, that is the power factor of the rotor. If there is a difference between the voltage, that is the EMF generated, and the current, then that cosine of that angle must be included here while calculating the torque. So torque is directly proportional to phi into I2 into cos phi 2. Now, if we remove the proportionality constant, then a constant will be present here. Suppose that constant is K. Now I2, what is I2? I2 is the rotor current at standstill. Standstill means when it is not rotating. Okay, phi 2 is the angle between rotor EMF and the rotor current, and K is a constant. Now denoting the rotor EMF at standstill by E2, we will have the E2 is directly proportional to phi. So T directly proportional to E2 into I2 into cos phi 2. So T equals to K1 into E2 into I2 into cos phi 2. So this is our total equation of the torque. Now this is K1 is another constant here. This K1 value always depends upon the speed of the induction motor. Always remember that K is a constant that depends on the speed of the induction motor. Now, what is the starting torque? The torque developed by the motor at the instant of starting is called starting torque. In some cases, it is greater than the normal running torque, whereas in some cases, it is somewhat less. So, we need to determine what is the equation, how to calculate the starting torque or running torque. Both we need to find out. Now let the E2 be the rotor EMF per phase at standstill, R2 be the rotor resistance per phase, X2 equals to rotor reactance per phase at standstill. So Z2 equals to root under of R2 square plus X2 square equals to rotor impedance per phase at standstill. Then I2 equals to E2 by Z2. Okay, so put the value of Z2, that means E2 by root under of R square plus X2 square. Now here we are calculating the magnitudes. Okay, so cos theta 2 equals to R2 by Z2, because from the impedance triangle, I hope you can remember, this is our Z, this is our R, and it is our X, right? And this is our phi or theta. Here we are denoting, we are calculating everything in phi. So here suppose the angle is phi. So what is cos theta? That is R by Z, right? So R2 divided by root under of R2 square plus X2 square. Now what is standstill or starting torque? At standstill, that slip is equals to 1 because the rotor is not rotating. So ns minus 0 by ns equals to 1. Okay, so here K1 into E2 into I2 into cos theta 2, put the values here. So T starting torque equals to K1 into E2. Now put the value of I2. I2 value is E2 divided by root under of R2 square plus X2 square into, put the value of cos theta 2. This is the equation of cos theta 2. This is the value of I2. So ultimately you will get this kind of equation. That value is K1 into E square into R2 divided by R2 square plus X2 square. So if the supply voltage is constant, then the flux, if the supply voltage is constant, then the flux phi and hence E2 both will be constant. So if we take the E as constant, then we can write as TST equals to K2 into R2 by R2 square plus X2 square. So this is nothing but Z again. So R by Z whole square. Here what is K2? K2 is another constant, that is equals to K1 into E square, E2 square. Okay, check this K1 into E2 square has been converted into K2 constant, because if the supply voltage V is constant, then flux and the rotor EMF will be constant. So this K1 value, now need to calculate what is K1. K1 equals to 3 by 2 by ns. I already told you that K is a constant that is dependent on ns value, that is the synchronous speed. So TST equals to 3 by 2 pi ns into E2 square R2 divided by R2 square plus X2 square. The resistance of the squirrel cage motor is always fixed and small as compared to its reactance, which is very large, especially for the start, because at standstill the frequency of the rotor current equals to the supply frequency. Hence the starting current I2 of the rotor, though very large in magnitude, lacks a very large angle behind E2, result that the starting torque per ampere becomes very poor. It is roughly 1.5 times of the full load torque, although the starting current is 5 to 7 times of the full load current. Hence, such motors are not useful where motor has to start against heavy loads. Okay, fine. Now, next is the torque under running condition. So, previous we discussed at standstill condition. Now, here we will generate the equation for running condition. In running condition, again the same equation we will apply, that is P directly proportional to ER into IR into cos phi 2, or T directly proportional to phi into IR into cos phi 2, where ER equals to rotor EMF per phase under running condition and IR is the rotor current per phase under running condition. Now, in running condition, there will be a slip because the synchronous speed is ns and now the rotor speed is nr, which is less than ns. So there will be a slip. Now suppose this slip is s. Okay, suppose the slip value is s. So the ER value will be the s times of the rotor EMF at standstill condition. Similarly, IR will be changed, cos phi 2 will be changed also. So let's check how it is changing. ER equals to S into E2 because it is decreased. Now IR value is ER by ZR. Now what is the change of ZR? ZR is root under of R2 square plus XR square. Now what is XR? XR is S into X2. Why? Because what is X2? X2 is 2 pi FL. X2 is 2 pi F into L. Now here at running condition, the frequency becomes F dash. That means S will be present here. So S comes here, right? So R2 square plus S into X2 square under root. This will be the equation of ZR. Here from the impedance triangle also you can see that R2, this one, this is your S into X2. Okay, because this is your XR now, correct? And this one is your phi 2. So our cos phi 2 equals to R2 by ZR, right? So put the values here, then you will get that T directly proportional to S into phi into E2 into R2 divided by R2 square plus SX2 whole square. Now this proportional value will be omitted and a constant will come into play, that is value is K. So K into phi into S into E2 into R divided by R2 square plus SX2 square. Now this flux is directly proportional to, again, the voltage, that means the EMF. So K1 into S into E2 square into R2 divided by R2 square plus SX2 square. Now if this E2 value is constant, then this total system will convert into K2 into S R2 divided by R2 square plus A square X2 square. Okay. Now you can see that at running condition that this torque is always depending upon the slip value, and at standstill condition if this S is 1, then it will be at standstill. At standstill, what is happening? S equals to 1, so T becomes equals to TST. Okay, so you can see the resemblance here. Now, where K1 is another constant as I discussed earlier, and so T equals to 3 by 2 pi ns into S into E2 square into R2 divided by R2 square plus Sx2 square. So 3 divided by 2 pi ns into S into E2 square R2 divided by Zr square. So it is depending upon the slip value. Now what is the relation between torque and slip? Now here, this is the characteristics of torque versus slip for an induction motor. Now how these curves are generated here? A family of torque by slip curves are shown here for a range of S running from 0 to 1 with R2 as a parameter. Now here torque is equals to K into phi into S E2 into R2 divided by R2 square plus Sx2 square. Now at S equals to 0, T is 0. Hence it will start from 0 again. So that means this point you are getting now. Okay. So at normal speed, that means close to synchronism, the term Sx2 is very small. Okay, because at running condition the slip value is so small, so it is negligible with respect to R2. Correct? So if this one is negligible with respect to R2, so only R2 will remain present. So this equation reduces to, in this specialized case, K phi S E2 into R2 divided by R2 square. So R2 will cancel out. That means T is directly proportional to 1 by R2 into S. That means it is inversely proportional with the resistance. That means this T is directly proportional to S by R2. So if R2 is constant, then T will be directly proportional to S. Now for low value of slip, the torque slip curve is approximately at a straight line, as you can see here. This portion is a straight line up to the maximum level reached. This is called the maximum torque line or breakup torque, because this is the maximum torque that we can get from the shaft. Now, as the slip increases, for increasing load on the motor, the torque also increases and becomes maximum. That means when S equals to R2 by X2, it is the maximum limit, maximum load torque condition. This torque is known as pull-out torque or breakdown torque, TB, or stalling torque again. So as the slip further increases, the motor speed falls with further increase in motor load. Then the R2 becomes negligible as compared to Sx2, that means the value of Xr. Now for that large value of slip, that R2 becomes smaller with respect to that reactance. So the equation becomes T directly proportional to S divided by Sx2 whole square. So it is inversely proportional to the S if X2 is constant. Okay, so here it is parabola. This is the equation of hyperbola. You can see here, not parabola, it is equation of hyperbola, T directly proportional to 1 by S. So here is the hyperbola nature. You can see here, right? Now here, as the resistance is increasing, the maximum torque limit is always same, only the running torque becomes higher. Correct? So hence the torque slip curve is a rectangular hyperbola. So we see that beyond the point of maximum torque, any further increase in motor load results in decrease in torque developed by the motor. The result is that the motor slows down and eventually it stops. The circuit breaker will be tripped open if the circuit has to be protected. In fact, the stable operation of the motor lies between the values of S of 0 to that corresponding to maximum torque. The operating range is already shown here, that is the shaded range. Okay, here is the log rotor torque, this is the pull-up torque, this one is the breakdown torque as I discussed earlier. Now the torque speed curve. The torque developed by a conventional three-phase motor depends on its speed, but the relation between two cannot be represented by a single equation. It is easier to show the relationship in the form of a curve. In this diagram, T represents the nominal full load torque, okay, of the motor. As seen, the starting torque at n equals to 0 is 1.5 times of the normal torque, and the maximum torque is the 2.5 times of the torque. At full load, the motor runs at a speed of n. That means the rotor speed becomes less than the synchronous speed. When the mechanical load increases, the motor speed decreases till the motor torque again becomes equal to the load torque. As long as the two torques are in balance, the motor will run at a constant but lower speed. However, if the load torque exceeds the 2.5, the motor will suddenly stop. Now this is the power stage of an induction motor. Here, this is the active power input that is given from here. Now in stator, the copper loss and iron loss will be there. Okay, so stator copper and iron loss, if it is reduced, it will be better. Our output will be better. Now if we subtract these losses from the input, we will get the rotor input that we will get from the rotor, that is called the air gap power. Then due to the armature conductor, there will be rotor copper loss again. Okay, that is the I2 square into R2. Now if we subtract that copper loss from the air gap power, that is P2, then we will get the shaft output. That means the mechanical power output from the rotor, that is called PM, and the corresponding torque is our gross torque, TG. Okay, next the windage and friction loss in the total system will be subtracted, and this is the final output of the rotor. Okay, here in this diagram you can also see this is the P1, that is the active power input. Subtract the stator loss and iron loss, then we will get the active power input to the rotor, or we can say it as air gap power. Next, rotor copper loss must be subtracted, then we will get the gross mechanical power and the corresponding shaft, corresponding gross torque, that is the TG. Again, from here the windage and friction loss will be subtracted and we will get the shaft power, that is P out, or we can say that amount of torque will be TSH. Okay, so this is the power stage of an induction motor. So now if we want to calculate the efficiency is nothing but the ratio of output by input, right? Now what is the output power here? That is EM. And what is the input power here? Input power is P1 or PI. Okay. Now here are the stages, the line diagram. You can see that motor input in stator equals to stator copper loss and iron loss, and rotor input P2 via air gap, or we can say this one as air gap power. Again, this is consisted of copper loss and the mechanical power developed PM, correct? And now from that PM, if we minus or subtract the windage and friction loss, the rotor output and motor output we can get. Now is the starting of the induction motor. Some of the methods for starting induction motors are here. We are discussing two types of induction motor starting. First is squirrel cage motor. Second is slip ring motor or wound rotor motor. So squirrel cage motors can be started by three ways. Primary resistors, by auto transformer starting, and star delta starter or switches. In all these methods, the terminal voltage of the squirrel cage motor is reduced during the starting. And slip ring motor, as we discussed earlier, that its starting process cannot be done from the stator side. It must be done from the rotor side. That means using the rotor rheostat. Now squirrel cage motor first type, starting by primary resistor. Here from the diagram you can see three-phase supply is given to the machine by using a switch, and this one is the primary resistor, and here the other resistors are inserted in star format, and here is the rotor. So our net voltage applied becomes X times. If the fraction is X, that means the voltage is reduced, so our starting torque will get reduced. So this is good for heavy loads. Now their purpose is to drop some voltage and hence reduce the voltage applied across the motor terminal. In this way, the initial current drawn by the motor is reduced. However, it should be noted that whereas the current varies directly as the voltage, the torque varies as the square of the applied voltage, because we know that torque is directly proportional to A square into E square. Okay, so this one is directly proportional to the square of this part. Okay, so E square, that means torque directly proportional to A square X square into E square. That means it is depending on the square of this X value. Okay. Next is auto transformer starting. Such starters are known variously as starters or compensators, consist of an auto transformer with necessary switches. We may use either two auto transformers connected as usual or three auto transformers connected in open delta. This method can be used for both star delta connected motors. Here are the construction you can see here. Okay. Next is star delta starter. This method is used in case of motors which are built to run normally with a delta connected stator winding. It consists of a two-way switch which connects the motor in star for starting and delta for normal running. Here you can see that star delta connections can be interchanged. While starting, start connection is done, and while running, that connection type becomes changed by the help of lever, and it will running in delta condition. Okay. Now here the current value, you can see that it is changed. For star connection, the current is V by root 3 into Z, and it is increased for delta type of running. That means ISC equals to V by Z. So it is increased. Okay. Next is the starting of slip ring motors. That means using the rheostat. These motors are practically always started with full line voltage applied across the stator terminals. The value of starting current is adjusted by introducing a variable resistance in the rotor circuit. The controlling resistance is in the form of rheostat connected in start, and resistance being gradually cut out of the rotor circuit as the motor gathers speed. Here, as the rotor rheostat we are moving, the resistance becomes decreasing and the rotor speed will increase gradually. So this is the connection of the slip ring induction motor, where the speed is varied with the help of this rheostat connected here in three-phase construction. Okay. So study the starting of slip ring motors, study the generation of torque at starting condition and running condition, and study the difference. Okay. So that's for today's session. Thank you. Have a nice day.